afternoon and welcome. I'm Professor Ryan Carlin of Georgia State University on behalf of the Atlanta Global Studies Center, the Center for Urban Language Teaching and Research, the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, and GSU's Global Studies program. I'd like to welcome you to GSU's Fall 2021 Global Career Series. This series features representatives from globally connected organizations to talk to students and recent graduates about the rewarding opportunities that await them. This event's part of GSU's International Education Week. Today, we're delighted to bring you representatives from foreign service agencies to talk about international federal programs. Our panelists today are DuBose, Alexious Butler, and Jacqueline Valadez. I'm going to give a quick introduction to each of them. DuBose is a career U.S. Foreign Service officer and diplomat in residence who began his career in the U.S. Department of State in 2005. Prior to joining the U.S. Foreign Service, DuBose worked in both finance and business operations at private sector companies, including IBM, Digital Equipment Corporation, and Iridium, LLC. DuBose is a management career track officer and has served in Hermosillo, Mexico, Guayaquil, Ecuador, and Dubai, United Arab Emirates. He also served domestically in support of U.S. missions in Latin America, Europe, and the Middle East. DuBose graduated with a BA in economics from the College of William and Mary and received his MBA in finance from Atlanta University. He speaks Spanish and is married with 3 children. Alexious DuBose is a career foreign service officer with the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. Prior to her current detail as acting deputy assistant administrator in the Bureau for Resilience and Food Security, Ms. Butler served as one of USAID's development diplomats in residence at Morehouse College from June 2020 through September 2021. In this role, she designed and managed the agency's Minority Serving Institutions Partnership and also the agency's inaugural Historically Black Colleges and Universities International Development Conference. In 2019, she completed a 4-year assignment in the Haiti mission, where she served initially as the Democracy, Rights, and Governance, or DRG, office chief, and then moved into the front office to serve as the Deputy Mission Director, DMD. Her DMD portfolio included the Offices of Foreign Disaster Assistance, Economic Growth, and Agriculture,
Okay, boss.
Food for Peace, and DRG.
All right.
That's the Democracy, Rights, and Governance program. Prior to her Haiti assignments, Ms. Butler served as DRG officer in South Sudan, Bangladesh, Iraq, and Afghanistan, as well as in Washington, D.C. in the Africa Bureau Chief's Conflict, Peace Building, and Governance section. Before joining USAID in 2006, Ms. Butler was the resident representative for the National Democratic Institute, the NDI, in Uganda, where she managed women's political participation, parties in parliament, and electoral observation programs, as well as voter education and outreach in northern Uganda. She also worked with NDI in Kenya and Tanzania on political party development. Upon completing her master's studies at the Sam Nunn School of International Affairs at Georgia Tech in 2002, Ms. Butler began working in the Africa section of the National Endowment for Democracy, the NED. At NED, she managed civil society programs in East and Southern Africa, as well as Nigeria. While in graduate school, she worked at the Carter Center as a graduate assistant and helped set up the center's office in Albania to support the development of that country's national development plan. She also worked for the Center on Conflict Resolution in northern Uganda. A native of Atlanta, Georgia, Ms. Butler worked in the private sector for almost 10 years as a public relations specialist for a variety of clients, including Bayer Pharmaceuticals, McDonald's, Nestle, Coca-Cola, and the World Bank. She earned her bachelor's degree in political science from Duke University in 1994. Ms. Butler also holds a master's degree in strategic studies from the U.S. Army War College. Our third panelist is Jacqueline, or Jackie Valadez. She is a field-based diversity recruiter for the PeaceCorps. She does outreach to institutions and population groups that may not have an established relationship with the PeaceCorps. She served as the Teaching English Leadership and Life Skills Co-Facilitator in Panama from 2017 to 2019. There, Jackie worked with 10 English teachers at an elementary school to encourage and support the English language program implemented by the Panamanian government. Prior to her service, Jackie obtained her bachelor's degrees from the University of Georgia in Romance languages and linguistics. And before I turn it over to our panelists, I'd like to give you a brief introduction to their organizations. I'd like for them to give you a brief introduction to their organizations. But before I do that, I'll go over a couple of housekeeping items. First, this session is being recorded, and we ask that you keep your mics muted to reduce any noise during the presentation. There will be about 30 minutes for Q&A after the presentation, so feel free to type your questions in the chat at any time. I'll be monitoring that, and then I'll set that. I'll moderate that Q&A. And now I'd like to turn it over to our esteemed panelists. We'll start with Alan, and then hear from Alexious and Jackie. Go ahead, Alan.
Thank you for having me, everybody. Again, my name is Alan DuBose, and my title right now is Diplomat in Residence. And the reason I say my title right now is because I am a U.S. Foreign Service officer. So when you think of a diplomat, that's what I am. We're like the military that every 2 to 3 years, we're doing a different tour or assignment. So my assignment right now is called Diplomat in Residence. I'm based in the Atlanta area, and I basically am recruiting throughout Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. Why am I recruiting? I'm recruiting because we need people who are going to be manning our embassies and consulates abroad. So while I'm capable of talking about our civil service careers, which are located mostly in DC, but definitely domestic, so people serving domestically, really the focus of recruiting is finding our best and our brightest who are going to be serving abroad, who are going to be our diplomats abroad. So we as an organization, again, have our U.S. Department of State, and a subset of that Department of State is the U.S. Foreign Service, and that's what we think of when we think of diplomats. So what we'll be talking about today, and when I talk about student programs mostly, and about careers definitely, it will be oriented towards the U.S. Foreign Service or our diplomatic corps. I'll pass on to Alexious.
Thank you, Alan. Yes, Alexious, please take it away.
Sure, thank you both, Alan and Ryan, so much for having me here today. I am a Foreign Service officer with USAID. So just so that nobody's confused about what that means, because of what Alan just said, I want to highlight that there are 5 agencies within the US government that have a Foreign Service component. And State Department is the largest and the oldest, but they're not the only ones. USAID also has Foreign Service, and then USDA has 2 Foreign Service components, and then Commerce has Foreign Service as well. And so I have been with USAID, as you heard from my bio, since 2006, but the agency as a whole has been around since 1961. Actually, this year we're celebrating our 60th anniversary. We were created under the same Foreign Assistance Act that the PeaceCorps was created. And so they had their 60th as well. And we're really happy with the way that our agency has developed and evolved over time. Right now, we have programs in over 80 countries around the world. And we are the lead US government agency working on international development. We are an independent agency, even though we are co-located in a lot of countries in the embassy with our State Department and our other interagency colleagues. We do consider ourselves an independent agency. And our administrator has recently been moved up to sit on the National Security Council, which we think also bolsters the independence of the agency. And so the other thing that I think is good for the participants to be aware of is that I'm also a Foreign Service officer, so I can speak more about that component better than our civil service component. But for those of you who are interested in working for USAID in the Foreign Service, you should know that there are several differences. One, because a lot of people think that the Foreign Service exam applies to all the Foreign Service agencies, and it does not apply to USAID. We do not use the Foreign Service exam. Ours is a straight application process. However, if you're interested in working for USAID as a Foreign Service officer, you should know that you will need to have a master's degree. because you're coming in as a subject matter expert in a particular area. And I can walk through those areas for anyone who's interested in learning more, but there's about 13 different subsectors. And so I won't go into them in the preview, but if anybody wants, I can type it into the chat just so you can have the list of them. As Ryan noted in my bio, I am a democracy and governance officer. And so that is what I've spent my career prior to joining USAID working on. I'd say even some of the work that I was doing in the private sector was very much focused on the work that we do in democracy and governance about civil society engagement and as well. And so there are definitely some linkages there, but just know that, you know, if you have a particular area of development that you're interested in, I'm happy to talk to you about that. If you don't really know for sure, if you want to do this development stuff, I'm also happy to talk to you about that, because it's not a job that appeals to everyone, and I get that. You know, our assignments are not going to be in the nice cushy spots that you get with some of the State Department assignments. You're going to be in a developing country, but I do like to tell people that in every one of the countries that I've been in, that Ryan listed up, I've been able to find something that I absolutely loved and enjoyed about being in those countries, either the people, usually the people to some degree, but the weather a lot of times, because I'm not a big fan of cold weather. I tend to seek out those posts that are warmer places. But you know, the food, the culture, those things. And it's those types of experiences that you really just can't buy. And quite honestly, if it wasn't for this career, I wouldn't have had those types of experiences. And a lot of them, for me, have been very life affirming. And so it's a phenomenal career, and I encourage you all to seriously consider it.
Thank you so much, Alexious. Jackie, please go ahead and tell us about the Peace Corps.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jackie Valadez. I'm here to share a little bit more about the Peace Corps with everyone. So as Alexious has shared, we are celebrating our 60th birthday here at Peace Corps. It's been a long time since Peace Corps was founded. And what the Peace Corps is, for anyone unfamiliar, we are a government agency, a federal agency, and our purpose is to promote world peace and friendship. That's our overarching goal at Peace Corps. And although it may seem, well, how do you measure that? How do you measure world peace and friendship? We do that by supporting countries that have specifically requested Peace Corps support. So the country will dictate what program they would like to see support in, who the ideal candidates for their programs are. And it's our job at Peace Corps to find that within the American population, because we're trying to replicate the American population in those we call Peace Corps volunteers. We're looking for everyone. There is no secret formula. This is a great opportunity for anyone at any age. If you have just graduated, if you are mid-career change, if you are retiring, or you just want something different in your life, could be something for you. And there are over 6 different program areas, or sectors as we call them. We are in over 60 countries. And again, our programs are overseas. The difference is that our programs are for only 2 years. So should you apply, should you be accepted, you can certainly join us, but you will have to work with one country for 1 year. So kind of like Alexious shared, we are not in like the very, I guess, more glamorous countries. It's a lot of different challenges and environments that we are in. And that's the beauty of Peace Corps, is that you will adapt. We train you on the language, we train you on the skill set you'll need. So you spend 3 months with us training, and then you officially start your 2 years with the Peace Corps. This is a great opportunity for anyone wanting to build their skill set. Again, if you want to maybe go to a different country and learn the language, and then in the future further your career in that language, it's a great career step in that way. As for myself, I was, as shared in my bio, I was in Panama myself, and I got to live in the community and really build out my community network there and be sort of at that grassroots level. So our work at Peace Corps is different from USAID in that ours is a lot of capacity building. Again, Ours is only 2 years, so it's not more permanent like the USAID. So definitely are always looking for individuals. If you are interested in learning more, I'm happy to answer more questions on the Peace Corps, but I hope everyone here considers us. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. That's great. I mean, what you can tell here is that even among these three panelists, there's a diversity of ways that this career can go. So I'd actually like to start by asking each of you to answer a preliminary question just to kick us off. But I'd like to remind the audience to please type your questions for our panelists in the chat. You can direct them at all or to one or, you know, anything like that, you know, but, and I'll try, what I'll try to do is kind of go back and forth between some of the prepared questions I have, but also I really want to make sure all of y'all have a chance to get your questions answered. So my first question, just to start us off, is what would you say are the top skills that your organization is looking for in potential interns or employees? And let's go in reverse order. Jackie, if you wouldn't mind starting.
Certainly, yeah. So because our work is for 2 years and you are in one country for 2 years and you might be remote, with the Peace Corps, I think the skill that is very tough is someone who is motivated. We want to know that when days are great, you're happy and you're motivated to do the work, because our work is centered around what the community wants. What the community wants is what you will work on in the Peace Corps. That's where your projects are tailored to. So if the day's going great, if you have water in the community, if you have the internet, signal is working, you're happy, yes, we want you in Peace Corps. And we want to know that when the water goes out and the internet signal goes out, that you will still be just as motivated to fulfill your duties in Peace Corps. So we're looking for someone who's super motivated to join. We'll look at that based off your resume and your motivation statement. And of course, someone who is understanding, someone who is definitely very empathetic, someone who can definitely connect with someone on a very basic and ground level, sort of at the core. We are looking for someone who can be understanding, but I think our top skill that we look for is someone who's motivated. And however you can share that, again, in your application, that's what we're really, really looking for.
Thank you. And you do provide language training, I suppose.
We do. So even if someone is, for example, they're going to Mongolia, and maybe you're like, I don't have this language in my college, or I never took this. How am I supposed to learn it? We want to know that you'll be just as motivated to learn the language and go through all that, because there's a learning curve at Peace Corps. So we want to know that when days are rough, you'll still be in it and very motivated to continue with us.
Thank you very much. All right, Alexious.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really happy to follow Jackie, because we love the Peace Corps folks that come to work for USAID, because a lot of those traits that they're looking for as far as hiring, and then that you actually hone while you're doing your volunteer service, are those that we also look for at USAID. And I also like to highlight that a lot of people assume that, you know, you have to have a political science degree, or you have to have majored in international affairs or something along those lines. None of that is required for us. Keep in mind, because we do have specialized areas that we work in, we are always looking for people who have a medical background, be that as a practitioner, as a nurse or a doctor, or as a researcher, or any of those components. That all still fits within what we're looking for at USAID. My degree is in political science, my undergraduate degree, and then my graduate degree is international affairs, which are, you know, broad kind of general degrees, but that's just me. And that worked for what I was doing, which was political development. That was the area that I was focusing my career on. And because people that we hire in the Foreign Service will tend to be older, in that, you know, you have to have your master's degree already, and most of them will have some work experience. For people who are looking to get work experience, we definitely forward them over to the Peace Corps, because like I said, it is a great training ground for the type of work that we are going to be doing. You're essentially a level removed, I would say, from the level in which the Peace Corps works if you're working with USAID. but a lot of the work is very similar as far as the focus that we have on some of those areas. And so, I encourage people to look for job opportunities that will fit within their area that they are passionate about. Like I said, for me, political development was the area that I really loved, and elections and the specifics of elections, not the sexy part, like, the results of things, but getting to the results is what I was always interested in. I wanted to know, like, how do you actually design the ballot paper? Where are we ordering this from? What does the polling station setup look like? Are we ensuring that women have equal access to men? And those types of questions were the ones that I always really got into on elections. But a lot of people, again, don't think about those kinds of components. And so we want people that are interested in learning how the sausage is made, right? Like what really goes into these actual big events that are happening in different countries. But for people that are interested in agriculture, because that's a big area that we work in, food security, so we're always looking for folks that are on these different spectrums as far as their backgrounds and experience goes. But, as far as personality goes, those things that Jackie listed are certainly within what we're looking for at USAID.
Excellent. Great. Alan, go ahead.
And it's great to go after both of these ladies because as the biggest foreign affairs agency, yes, and yes, we're looking, everything the ladies mentioned, we're looking for that too, because we are considerably larger. And so we have different people in the US Foreign Service who will perform each of those roles. I remember being a poll watcher when I was in Mexico, for example. And we have people doing projects in the community in some areas. The good thing is we also have some glamorous posts. So some of our posts aren't necessarily the hard places. They also get the glamorous, so you can kind of go back and forth throughout your entire career. So one thing I'm going to point out in the chat is I put careers.state.gov in the chat. The reality is 90% of what comes out of my mouth, you can find at careers.state.gov. So when I'm going to talk a little bit, real quickly is so you understand, because we are bigger, we're organized a little differently. When we talk about foreign service careers, we talk about two broad categories, and then they break out into other categories. The two broad categories are the specialist and the generalist. Specialists require whatever's required for that job. So they may require a bachelor's degree. They may require 5 years of experience doing that job in finance or engineering or human resources, facility management, IT, anything that is required to do that specific skill. And those people will spend their careers working in that skill. And those careers, you can find out more at careers.state.gov and how you apply for those. The other side is just the opposite. We call generalists, we call them journalists for a reason. They're general. We don't care what you major in, your background, you just have to have what we call 13 dimensions. I'm going to post in the chat that basically, there you go. Those 13 dimensions are things that we have studied, and we said, if you're good at these characteristics, you're going to be a good generalist. And this is one reason we love people who have the similar backgrounds to USAID, Foreign Service personnel, and definitely Peace Corps people. Oh goodness, we are just waiting for Peace Corps people to finish their tours, and we're right at the door saying, hey, let's talk Foreign Service, because they have what's called cultural adaptability. And what that is being able to adapt to different environments. And they learn that in the Peace Corps. Judgment is huge for us, because even if you have perfect information, which you never have, you have to know what to do with it. You still have to make a decision. Resourcefulness, we never have enough money. So we always have to figure out how we're going to do with less. Leadership. Keep in mind, it costs Uncle Sam somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000 to send one of us overseas for a 3-year tour. That's expensive. So they don't send us overseas to do the hand-on work. We go overseas, and you should expect from your first assignment to your last that you may be supervising people. So no matter what your role is, you should have the expectation that you have the skills and ability to supervise. So if you go to careers.state.gov, you hear more details about everything I just said, but essentially, go to those 13 dimensions, read through and understand those 13 dimensions, And everything in our process leads back to those skills.
Great, thank you so much. We have a handful of questions that kind of go together. I'm going to try to ball them up into one. So we have a question from Kiero about opportunities locally for Peace Corps, and we have one about whether or not foreign service agents must live in the U.S., and we have one about whether or not there are opportunities for non-citizens, whether those are internships or not. So they're all kind of about the location in which you do this work. And so maybe if we could start with Alan, maybe talking a little bit about how, especially the one that applies from EB about where you have to be based and so forth.
So you should expect to be a U.S. citizen for any of these. It doesn't matter if you're naturalized or if you were born in the U.S. And the reason is because you have to get a security clearance. And the security clearance usually is a secret level or higher. Most of the foreign service personnel, it's going to be a top secret. And that's the reason that one has to have their U.S. citizenship. As far as where you live, it all depends on where you're assigned. Again, think military in the sense that you do 2 or 3 years, then you go somewhere else 2 or 3 years, somewhere else 2 or 3 years. You know in advance where you're going to go. I just found out a week ago where I'm going to be starting in July. So we do this in advance, and then everything is planned based on that. If you are posted abroad, you should plan on living at that post. There are rare exceptions, and we do have a couple central organizations, like in Frankfurt, Germany, we have people who are kind of substitutes, and they travel throughout Europe substituting for others. Down in Fort Lauderdale, we have people substituting, so they spend their time traveling throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. But overall, when people are assigned overseas, they should expect to live there. One last thing about living there, and that is during a career, let's assume you have 20 years. That's what we call a career, even though it might be 30, but we do want a good 20 years so we can get our money out of you. You're probably going to spend about 50 to 70% of your time abroad. You know, if Uncle Sam can get 70% of you abroad, Uncle Sam will be happy, but you have some control over that. And sometimes people have family issues, especially when they have elder care and things like that. So they may want to spend time in the States. And there are always ways to get around that, like going to Canada or Mexico. So you're abroad, right? But you might as well be in the States. You're a few hours from the border. So there are ways of getting around this, but the bottom line is you should always assume that you're going to live in the country that you're assigned.
Excellent, thank you. Alexious, maybe you have something to add to this.
Sure. So as far as, there's no requirement that you maintain an actual resident in the US when you're overseas. You're an employee of the US government, and there's an address that we have that we use, that's like our pouch address, we call it, that you can use like to send any bills or things that you need, magazines, et cetera, overseas. I did keep my apartment in DC when I went overseas, just because I liked having a place to come back to. I did not want to have to come back to my childhood bedroom in Atlanta when I was coming back for a home leave. And so I wanted to make sure that I had a place. Now, some people will have a place that they'll rent out when they're not there, which is what I ended up doing most of the time. But I liked the idea of having my own place. And so as far as non-Americans, I do want to note that overseas, we do hire a significant number of what we call foreign service nationals. I think State Department calls them cooperating country nationals. And those are individuals who are citizens of the countries that we work in. And for USAID, those individuals are oftentimes the stability that is for our programs. Because foreign service officers, we have some posts that are 4 years, some that are 2 years, some that are 1 year, but we're going to be moving in and out, whereas these individuals will be there for 20, 30. I actually met with an FSN the other day who'd been working with USAID since she was 20 and she was getting ready to retire. So 45 years she had been at the USAID mission. So those individuals who are not US citizens, but who are planning to go back to their home of record, can certainly apply to work at one of our missions overseas, but we also have what's called third country nationals. And so if you're interested in going, let's say if you're from Bangladesh and you're interested in going to work for a USAID project in Haiti, you would be considered a third country national. And that is something that we also do overseas. However, in the US, you have to be a US citizen to work for us. And that includes our internships as well.
Thank you. Excellent. And Jackie, there was a question about domestic opportunities in the Peace Corps. And also there was something about, if you could describe a typical day, a day in the life of a Peace Corps officer in the field. I'm sure that's a tricky one, but I'm sure you have something to say about that. So go ahead, please. Thank you.
Certainly. Some current local opportunities here in the US. Our work as a Peace Corps volunteer is done internationally. We do have some opportunities in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, where those who are returned Peace Corps volunteers or were Peace Corps volunteers, they have been offered a short-term assignment to support in the vaccination efforts in communities that have a low vaccination status. So that is kind of reserved for those that have already done Peace Corps, as a way for those, especially that their service was kind of cut short because the ongoing pandemic, as an opportunity for them to continue to fulfill their service in some way, shape, or form. So that is a local opportunity, but for everyone else, unfortunately, our opportunities are overseas. I know locally there are other programs through the federal government that I would recommend looking into for anyone interested in similar work to the Peace Corps. They are another federal agency called the AmeriCorps. I would recommend reaching out to them or checking out their own website. As for a typical day in the Peace Corps, whatever a typical day could be, I was an education volunteer. I lived in a small community in the mountainous region of Panama. So for me, my typical day consisted of going to the elementary school, working with the 10 English teachers that I was supporting. So I supported in student engagement and motivation in the classroom. And that was my typical day, was being there for so many hours. The schools are very different from the US, so I appreciated Peace Corps' very thorough training. So I'm not going from the US to Panama comparing and contrasting everything. I'm having to learn and adapt. So my day consisted of going to the school for so many hours, a lot of hellos, a lot of games with the students, a very tired Jackie after 6 hours. And then I would typically rest on my hammock for the rest of the afternoon. It was pretty nice where I would rest on the hammock, but I would rest with my neighbors because our porch, there's a big porch. The community loved sort of saying hi to one another. So I would hang out with my host grandma. For anyone really interested in what my service looked like, I would just spend my days with her after school, would just unwind, have coffee, share my day, say hi to all the parents that were walking by. I lived with my host grandma. And I would then move on to my second activity of the day, which was supporting a local hostel that there was in the community I was assigned to. And I did English time with the employees there. They were all local residents that were working at the hostel, and they wanted English conversation time to support any tourists from an English speaking country. So I did that for maybe an hour or so, and then I would go and end my day with dinner with my host family. So there was a lot of walking, a lot of biking. Definitely was out by 8 p.m. That was it. Lights were out. I was knocked out because there's so much hello, right? I'm motivated. I want to say hello to everyone. I want to listen to the stories of what happened in the TV show last night. I didn't catch it because I fell asleep. So all those little conversations do add up, and you do become really tired, and then it kind of repeats again in some way, shape, or form the next day. But that was my typical day. It was a lot of interaction, a lot of hellos, a lot of people that do live with me to this day. So beautiful memories that I've had. Thank you for asking those. And I did want to address one more question. With the Peace Corps, you do have to be, with the Peace Corps volunteer program, you do have to be a US citizen, and you do have to be over the age of 18. Similar to the USAID, we do have a lot of host country nationals that are employed by the Peace Corps in that country. So if there's Peace Corps Guatemala, they're looking for nationals of Guatemala to support. Again, they're like the constant Peace Corps volunteers come and go, but the individuals supporting the programming, the training of the new era of volunteers, they are there. They live there and they help in the training of the new Peace Corps volunteers. So those are opportunities for individuals who are citizens of other countries.
Ryan, before you go on, there was one thing I did want to touch on, I kind of glossed over. If anybody has any spousal employment questions, I strongly urge you to just kind of talk to us individually, because chances are it's kind of a customized thing. We have different options available, including if a spouse goes overseas or stays domestic, if you have children, if those children have schools at post that are good enough quality or they don't qualify, it's kind of like putting a puzzle together. So if you have a spousal employment issue, I would urge you just talk to us directly.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you so much. You know, not everybody can afford to take an unpaid internship. And I know that those are maybe options for some, but and not everyone can study abroad. So I'd like to hear from our panelists, what other kinds of experiences you might recommend for our students who would like to prepare themselves for a global career?
Well, I'd like to start by saying that USAID, our administrator announced at an event last week where she, which was part of our 60th anniversary celebration, and she announced her focus for the agency. And one of those was in tripling the number of paid internships that we have available within the agency. And so we are moving towards a much larger number of opportunities available. And right now, those opportunities are virtual. And so you don't have to move to DC in order to be able to do those internships. And we're looking at whether or not how we can continue providing those virtual opportunities, recognizing that even with the salary that is paid under this internship program, sometimes it's still cost prohibitive to move up to Washington for it. So we're expanding those opportunities. And I also just want to put a plug in that we're now also doing internships year round. And so it's not just summer. We also have spring and fall, I guess would be the name of it. And as far as other opportunities goes, you know, Ryan mentioned in my bio, you know, I worked at the Carter Center, which does have a paid internship program for those of you in the Atlanta area. But there's also other organizations in Atlanta that are there and that provide different opportunities. CARE is a big one that a lot of people forget about, but their headquarters is right here. And so those are at least two opportunities. I also know that the Andrew Young Center used to do employment programs. I don't know if you guys still do that, but back when I was in school, that was an opportunity. But just look at what is available at your university or in other universities in the area. I know that there were some opportunities that came up at the AU Center where you didn't have to be a student at the AU Center in order to apply for these opportunities. And so just know that just here in Atlanta, it's greatly expanded. But also think about Coca-Cola or Home Depot or those guys who also offer internships here in Atlanta. I worked at Coca-Cola for quite a while, and like learning about how businesses operate, particularly on an international scale, is a really good skill to have as you go into government operations. I'm sure Alan can attest to this, because one of the things that I was always like, this is not the most efficient way to do these things. There's got to be more efficient ways. And some of those things you can't change, but some of them you can. And having that perspective is one that I think is valuable to bring to the table. So don't rule out any opportunities that come your way. Just note that it's about how you utilize them going forward.
Can I go?
That's great, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of segues that, I don't know if you saw me write my notes. One, there is a direct correlation between the success in getting in the Foreign Service, specifically when you're younger, and internships. No doubt about it, it is advantageous. However, it doesn't have to be a Department of State. So I tell everybody, cast a wide net. Don't focus on your agency when you're looking for internships. Go to usajobs.gov and look at any agency that may have an internship in something that falls within your area of interest. So if you're looking for public relations, because you want to be a public relations officer in the Foreign Service, but they have it maybe with your local state capital or the federal government at a different agency, it's still public relations. You're getting that experience. So cast a wide net. Second thing, tell you a quick story as fast as I can. I met a young lady. She was an intern, not an intern. She was working at a food bank. I said, what do you do at the food bank? She said, whatever my supervisor tells me to do. I said, okay, go back to your supervisor, tell your supervisor you want to be responsible for a section in that food bank, soup to nuts, everything. She said, okay. Went to supervisor, came back. He loved the idea. He just handed me the books, said, go handle it. Now I'm dealing with irate customers. I'm dealing with scheduling issues. I'm dealing with cleanup. I'm dealing with stocking shortages. She is checking off each of those 13 dimensions we talked about. Resourcefulness, leadership, having to deal with communications. So even though she's not necessarily even getting paid and it has nothing to do with foreign service, she's developing those skills that we're looking for. And the last thing I would say is take advantage of I don't want to get the acronym wrong, VSFS. This is an internship that opens in July 1, closes July 31. So go to USA Jobs or careers.state.gov and put a tickler in so it'll notify you to remind you when it opens. This internship is one that does not require a security clearance, and it is open to freshmen as well. It is a cross agency, and it is a program that was built for virtual interns. So it was not affected by the pandemic. And the way it works is you commit to 10 hours a week during your academic year working as a virtual intern. So normally the type of and quality of assignments you get are things that maybe I don't have time to do, so I need you to do it for me. So it's valuable work. And you have a very close relationship with your supervisor. So mentorship is almost built into this. So go look up VSFS. And you can, I always tell people, start at careers.state.gov. It'll tell you where to go. But look up VSFS, and this is kind of low-hanging fruit because many agencies participate in this. And again, it doesn't matter which agency, just get the experience.
Thank you. Jackie, do you want to add something into this conversation?
Yes, I would like to. So with the Peace Corps, because I would say majority of those that do apply to Peace Corps and kind of make it to service are recent four-year degree individuals who hold a four-year degree or maybe graduated from their undergrad institution 1 to 2 years, within 1 to 2 years. So we do have a more on the lower end of experience, more new professionals. One thing I would say for anyone considering the Peace Corps, definitely consider it as a step into these other two agencies that are here today. But what recommendations I would have for anyone, it's very similar to what Alan has just shared. Although we recognize not everyone can go overseas, there's no perfect formula. There's no formula we plug you into at Peace Corps of, oh, they, you know, this person doesn't have that semester abroad. Man, they can't go to Peace Corps. No. So what we're looking for, we understand not everyone can go abroad. We understand not everyone can take an unpaid internship. And we understand maybe you just weren't aware of the opportunities. A lot of students, maybe you're just, college is new, you're a first gen college student and you don't know about everything sort of out there unless you really ask. But what we're looking for in place of all that, we want to know that maybe you took classes within an international focus. Okay, we want to hear about those. Maybe you didn't take that because we don't look for a specific major, but you are involved in your community. We want to see some form of volunteer work and that you can in some way, shape, or form empathize with causes that are happening around the world. So we are looking for that. Now, maybe you, again, we're thinking of everyone. So maybe you can't volunteer because you have to work a full-time job to support your study. Okay, then we want to hear, oops, excuse me about that. Man, then we do want to hear how you're prepared to take on Peace Corps and why Peace Corps fits into your career plan. Because there are individuals I meet that have not had a chance to volunteer or take on a lot of opportunities because they have to work, and that's okay. So we want to hear that. How does Peace Corps fit into your plan? One thing I notice as a recruiter for Peace Corps, I definitely can tell if someone is ready for Peace Corps by the conversations I have with them. If this person talks about Peace Corps and refers to the people we are working with alongside and supporting, and holds the people in respect, then I know they are very well aware of the international relationship we have. Now, if someone might use words or unconsciously, they unknowingly might use a word that deems someone less, then that's when I know there's some work to be done, and we have to talk a little bit more about what it means to be in an international setting, and I'm going to try to give you context. So we're looking for all those, looking for leadership roles in your workplace or in a volunteer club, or that maybe you've taken classes within an international focus. Those are some things that can prepare you. A foreign language, and you've gotten a chance to be exposed to maybe a different culture in that way. So those are just some of the things we look for. If you want to learn more, I'm happy to talk more about them, but I'm just trying to give a different perspective for anyone who maybe can't get an internship, or maybe it's too late, or whatever it may be. But thank you for listening.
And Ryan, I just want to jump in. So I posted one of the State Department has fantastic summer programs. Unfortunately, USAID is not. We're still behind the bar on that one. But the application deadline for that is passed, but I posted it as an example of something that the participants can be looking out for. A lot of different organizations will have something like this. I think that, Commerce Department does a summer program. I think Treasury and Agriculture might also have a summer program. So those are things that, you just really have to go through the internet and see what's out there. But just note that all of those types of things do add up cumulatively to a fantastic experience that would set you well up for a career with any of our agencies.
Oh, excellent. I was hoping you'd comment on the Wrangle program, but yeah, thanks for posting the link. And that's something that we do get a heads up with, on around here, and we try to circulate those calls. So yeah, to the students on here, keep your eyes open, and hopefully you'll see an update when there's a new call for applications. I was wondering, we have a couple of questions about language. So I guess I kind of would like to hear from our panelists, and maybe some of you have already kind of mentioned this, but tell us kind of a little bit about your language experience before, and as before you became a Foreign Service officer, if you have any advice on languages that are in super high demand, or any ways that students can use their language skills or their language learning skills to better position themselves for this career. So maybe start with Alan.
All right, so I'll talk quickly because we got a lot of stuff. So basically, there is a requirement for someone to have a career as a generalist, that person demonstrate competence in at least one foreign language. Mine was Spanish. The way I did it is I started with some Spanish. They gave me an intro test, and they said, you're not there yet, but we can train you. And they gave me 6 weeks of training instead of the full 6-month course. And then I was able to get to the point where I passed the test. So I checked off that box. The way we do it is, if you get an assignment to go overseas, then they're basically committing to teaching you that language. So now that I have Spanish, I can go to a Spanish-speaking country, or I can try to go to Portuguese-speaking or Italian-speaking. And since it's a Romance language, hopefully it'll be easier for me to pick up that language. So some people choose to do that during their career, whereas other people say, I want to do something completely different, and they'll go for Arabic or something like that. The reality is, the majority of people in the Foreign Service, I'm one of the dumb ones, I only have one language. Most of us have 2 good, and then maybe even a third one kind of so-so. Let's talk about entry. You are not required to have a foreign language to compete for entry. However, it will never hurt you if you already have it. It can only help you. And in some cases, it can help you directly if you have passed the test. They'll give you the test over the phone. If you can pass the test in speaking and reading, you don't test writing, in Arabic or Mandarin. Those are going to be in high demand probably until I retire. So if you have Arabic or Mandarin, there is continual high demand. If you have some of the other languages, it may help you, but it may not. Basically, supply and demand. Spanish is not going to help you as much as some of these others. And after I just said that, and I'm going to say, but then we have exceptions to that. I'll post in here a program we have that's fairly young called our Consular Fellows Program. And think of it as a supplemental program where we need consular staff who are going to be doing entry-level work, the same as an officer would do, but they're not going to make a full career out of it. So the attitude in this case is if you have Spanish, Portuguese, definitely some of the others like Mandarin and Arabic, but some of the Indian dialects, Hindi or something like that, they may qualify as part of our Consular Fellows Program, which is basically only a 5-year commitment. And so really it's the language driving the skill as opposed to the skill driving the language. And I'll post this in here so you can learn more about it. Again, all this, the summary is you don't have to have a language, but it can only help you if you do. And if you come in with a unique language, Farsi or Arabic or Mandarin, we want to talk to you.
We're going slightly out of order, but I do want to hear from Alexious first, and then come to Jackie, because I think maybe Alexious is maybe closer to, maybe slightly closer, or maybe a good bridge between the two of you.
Well, I also don't consider myself a linguist. But so USAID will teach you a foreign language. As Alan said, you do have to be able to demonstrate the ability to speak a language, a foreign language, in order to be tenured as a foreign service officer, but you don't have to come in with that language. I took French when I was in college, in high school and college, and honestly, I wish I'd taken Spanish because it's a much more useful language. But one of the good things about having a background in any language, but particularly when you come into the foreign service, is that it lessens the amount of time you have to spend in language training, which is really a benefit because language training for the foreign service is no joke. You are 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, immersed in this language. And it gets to a point where you're like, I really just need this to be done. And so, yeah, so I like I said, I came in with French, and so French was the language that I was tested in. And I did have to spend 3.5 months to get to the level that you need to get to in order to pass the test. However, I do want to note that USAID has less of what we call language designated posts than State Department does. And so we won't teach you every language for every post that you go to. In some countries, like when I was in Bangladesh, English is also considered official language there. And so we weren't taught Bangla in advance of going there. You do have a language person at post who can help you learn the local language. But because the government is producing all of their documents also in English, the necessity to learn Bangla was reduced. It is great, though, to be able to have a conversation with people in the market, or or if you're driving and you want to yell at some other bad driver next to you. It's nice to have that kind of vocabulary in your back pocket. But we do help you learn that at post. So just know that it doesn't rule you out if you don't already have it, but it is helpful if you start working on it before you get to the point where you're applying. Excellent,
excellent. And Jackie, I'm interested to hear your point of view, and then maybe just a little bit finer point on it. I often get the sense that it's a bit of potluck with Peace Corps, and maybe you can address that too. Do you have a choice? Does language somehow influence where you may or may not go, or is it really just potluck? It can't be potluck, right? See, there must be a logic to it, although you never know. So anyway, please, thank you.
Absolutely. So in some ways, I feel like it can be potluck. I know that, because I will share my own experience to give you insight. So my major was linguistics. My major was also Romance languages. So I was looking at everywhere around the world when I was applying to Peace Corps. And for me, looking through the openings on the website when I was applying in my senior year, I'm a heritage Spanish speaker. So that's one language I had. I had all these other languages. So looking through, I thought, I'm not sure which one I'm competitive for. Maybe I'm being harsh on myself. I'm just going to kind of say, send me anywhere. And these are my qualifications. So back then when I applied, you had to rank programs, like what you wanted, what was your first choice, second choice, third choice. So I kind of said, first choice, Ukraine, Panama, one of those two. And then honestly, send me anywhere is what I told Peace Corps. And then I got an invitation to be an interview invitation for Panama. And then as the history goes, I served in Panama. So I had to speak Spanish. And for me, I'm thinking, well, was this a factor? Maybe, I don't know. Was my language a factor, or was it my skill set? The world will never know. But nowadays, you can certainly indicate to Peace Corps where you would like to go. We don't have a language requirement, but if you would like to serve in a Spanish-speaking country, we do ask that you have 2 semesters at a college level or 4 years of high school within your resume or experience, because these countries are just more high demand. You don't have to be fluent. We just want to know that you have that foundation, or be a heritage speaker like I was. But the training was intense. Even as a heritage speaker, I still had to go to training every single day for 3 months, waking up and going to Spanish class and having to read and sit through grammar. And I'm thinking, wow, I never learned Spanish in this way. My parents kind of taught me, and that's how I kind of learned how they spoke it. So that's where my journey was, where I could empathize a lot with Alexious said of some days it just felt like a fire hydrant of information coming my way in Spanish. I'm just like, I don't know what to say, how to respond. I thought I knew Spanish, but this is Peace Corps is having me second guess everything. I made it though. So we will consider your language. Having, again, not necessary, but you can certainly put it on an application, because sometimes people might have a language, but honestly, they might not want to go where the program currently is. For example, I've met a lot of individuals who do speak Spanish, but they have told me, Jackie, I don't want to go somewhere that speaks Spanish. I want to go somewhere different. And that's okay to put it on your application of, hi, Peace Corps, I would like to go somewhere not within Spanish-speaking Latin America. And we will absolutely do our best to honor that. So we do ask for flexibility, but we will try to honor one's preferences as much as we can.
If I can real quickly before you move on, you'll see I put a link in there. If you're wondering, am I competent in this language? Will I be able to pass the test? Well, there's a link that gives you an idea. I did have one colleague who told me he could speak 5 languages. He took the test and he came back and said, maybe I don't speak 5 languages. So click on that, you'll learn more about how you're graded.
Well, thank you so much, Alan, Alexious, and Jackie, for sharing your time with us today. We learned about some wonderful opportunities at your organization. And, we appreciate so much your valuable tips and advice for our students and soon to be job seekers. We want to thank you for participating in this Global Career Series here at GSU. We also want to thank our audience members for attending this session. We hope you enjoyed it. Our next session will be tomorrow. Following up nicely on this one, has to do with international nonprofit organizations, some of which were mentioned today in our conversation, CARE International and the Carter Center. So those two folks from those two organizations will be here, same time, same place. If you haven't yet registered, please use the link in the chat, which I think is probably going to the chat now. I'm not going to click away and find out, but finally, I'd like to thank the Atlanta Global Studies Center, the Center for Urban Language Teaching and Research, the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, and the Global Studies Program for organizing this series. All Global Career Series videos can be found on the YouTube channel in the chat. So I'll leave the chat open for a couple more seconds so people can locate that. And thanks again, and we hope you have a great afternoon. See you tomorrow, hopefully.